Kevin, it's been a few weeks since we last spoke after Danny was appointed. From your point of view, just how has this period been?
Yeah, generally very pleased. It's never easy for a head coach or a manager to come into a situation like Danny has, where you haven't had the pre-season, you come in at the start of the season, you're straight into a game within 48 hours, and especially the games that he's had to deal with so far, a couple of European games and then also a semi-final and also some very tough league games. And I thought he's done really, really well. Him and his staff are very good people. They've got clear experience, they've got clear expertise. They're working very hard with the players and they're very clear about what they want the players to achieve. I think we've made a good start, albeit we've not done as well as we would have liked in Europe so far. But in reality, league form has improved and we've hit 3 wins on the bounce now and feel like we're getting into some sort of rhythm. So long may that continue.
You've spoken before about the importance of having a clear plan. How confident are you that the club is now moving in the right direction with the new head coach and the structures being put in place?
Yeah, I still feel very confident. I mean, the situation is clearly that we felt like we weren't going in the right direction previously. And so, unfortunately, we had to make that change. And I think we've changed for an individual who's got very good experience despite his young years. And I think he's proven that with some of the things that we're seeing on pitch. I think there's a clear difference in terms of the way in which we're playing at the moment. And that's leading to getting some good results. And then I think in due course what we'll see a widening of that lens, if that makes sense. But number one, we all understand that we have to win football matches. And Danny understands that and I think he's demonstrating that. So been very pleased with him and the way in which he's approached the situation, very pleased with his staff, and then also very pleased with the players in terms of the way in which they've embraced, this new challenge, new coach, slightly different organisation, slightly different focus. So let's hope that takes us into much calmer waters and gets us those strength of results that we all want.
Just in terms of the rest of Danny's coaching staff, whereabouts are we on that?
Yeah, so we obviously appointed, we've kept some staff in Riso and in Sal Bibbo, and they're working very, very well with Danny and the rest of his team. And then Danny's also brought some staff. He's brought Sasha and he's brought Mats with him, who again have worked very, very well with the rest of that group and then also the rest of the people at the training facility. So I've been very, very pleased with the way in which they've embedded themselves. And that's not easy to do because change is difficult, and coming new into a football club and having to hit the ground running straight away is always very, very problematic, or can be problematic. So hats off to them in terms of their attitude to actually work in a particular way. They're very collaborative and then also very cooperative. I think Danny's mentioned a couple of times that we'd like to add some additional support, probably in the form of a local coach, perhaps somebody who knows the Scottish landscape much stronger than he does and much stronger than we do, and then perhaps some additional specialism. So I'd probably say just let's watch this space and see how that evolves now that we're out of a run of games, which perhaps gives us a little bit of breathing space to be able to think about those things in a bit more detail.
Just looking back to last Sunday's Old Firm match and several other high-profile incidents, there has been significant talk about refereeing. What steps are the club taking to address this?
Yeah, well, I'd probably start by saying that it's clear that everybody associated with Rangers Football Club is very, very frustrated with that fixture in particular. I think it's well known that we were disappointed with some of the consistencies of the refereeing on that day, and we've had some strong conversations with the SFA about some of those inconsistencies and some of those decisions. Following that meeting, I think it's probably also clear to say that whilst we agreed with some of the points that were made during the conversations, we still fundamentally disagree with some of the points that were made, and in particular the Austin Trustee incident. It's clear from our side that it's a red card. I think we all feel like it's a dangerous precedent to be setting to say that striking somebody on the head is nothing short of a red card, and so from our perspective I think we want to have another conversation with the SFA. We've been doing some analysis of our own over a much wider period, and perhaps want to talk to them again about some of that detail, for one reason only, and that is we want greater consistency, we want a greater quality and a greater standard of refereeing, and we want the focus to be on the football and not on the decisions. And so that's a conversation to be had with the SFA in due course once we've had a chance to present them with some more analysis.
Yeah, there have been a number of appointments in the football department since we last spoke. Can you tell us a bit more about that and what they will bring to the club?
Yeah, so it's an exciting time because we are starting to look at the way in which we're organised from a sporting perspective and say, okay, well, what does great look like? Where are we against that standard? And who can help us to reach that standard? And so to your point, we have been talking about making some new appointments, and we have also made some new appointments. I'm really pleased with the appointment of James Monty in particular. A guy from Dundee, previously worked with Huddle. It's probably our first ever appointment in this data space. He's going to provide us with a lot of insight and a lot of specialism in relation to data, not only from a recruitment perspective, but also from analysis of opposition perspective, analysis of our own game, and then also medical and sports science and coaching. So I think it's a great appointment, and we're really looking forward to seeing the benefits of that. We're talking about making another appointment in the Director of Football Operations role. Just to be clear about what that role looks like, that very much is focused on the way in which we operate on a day-to-day basis at the training facility, the way in which we organise our teams, making sure that we get them to the right places and be in the right spaces at all of the right times. It's about the way in which we administer the transfer windows, and it's about governance and process and strategy to make sure we're well organised as we possibly can be and as efficient as we possibly can be. And then, of course, we've had other appointments, by the way of example, Leanne Crichton, who's joined us as women's head coach, which we were absolutely delighted that we were able to get that appointment over the line. And then we've got John Hunter Barrett starting in the new year as our new academy director. So lots going on, lots of work, and hopefully in due course there'll be a good opportunity to share some of that work in a bit more detail.
Just, I guess, what do each of these different roles do? I mean, what is the difference between, say, a technical director, director of football ops, and the head of recruitment?
Yeah, so put very simply, let's start right at the top. So a manager became a head coach because the manager just had so much to do that he wasn't able to focus on some of the most important bits of the day-to-day business, which was preparing the team, concentrating on performance of the team, and then fundamentally the results. So some of that responsibility got dissolved to a person like me, like a sporting director, and it's no different for the sporting director. And there's so many broad aspects of the role now that some of that responsibility is getting devolved back down to other people. So, for example, a technical director, we all know how important the recruitment space is. You have to get that space right, and that's a big part of Dan Purdy's role here, to have some real focus, provide some real specialism, some real expertise in that area, because that's where we spend all our money, effectively, not only on salaries, but on agents' fees, but also on transfer fees. If we get that space right, we get the product on the team right, product on the pitch right with the team, and then also we're able to generate and trade and so on to help us make the team better year on year. That, of course, will be very different to the description that I've just given you around Director of Football Operations, which is very much around that operational administration, governance, process, strategy space. So clear differences between all of those roles, but hopefully providing high-level expertise to make us as strong operationally and as efficient as we possibly can be, to help us to make good decisions and come out with some very good outcomes. Just looking at the academy, we've seen the likes of Kyle Glasgow joining the first team squad for the Roma game, Ashton Scally for the Genk match. Just what's the thinking behind that? Yeah, so listen, I know that youth development has been important to Rangers, and it will continue to be. It's very important to me. You know that my background was in academy management, so developing young players and giving young players opportunities is something that all clubs should be doing, and certainly big clubs like Rangers should be doing. I think we've got some very, very good young players here, and I also think we've got a very good academy. But what makes the very best academies is the ones that give opportunities to their young players, and that's where a lot of clubs find it difficult and a lot of clubs fall down. We don't want to be one of those clubs. We want to say, if you're our best talents, we don't want you to leave for somewhere else. We want you to play for Glasgow Rangers, and then we want you to succeed at Glasgow Rangers, and we want you to help us to win at Glasgow Rangers. And so selling those messages and starting that process and creating that pipeline is probably one of the first things that we started to do. And then it's also very important that we put our money where our mouth is, and that's exactly what we have been doing. those two young boys in European squads to give them that additional experience. Those and others training with the first team in the international breaks, so training with Danny, training with first team players, and then also playing in friendly fixtures, etc. And so that's something that we've started and something that we'll continue to do to make sure we sell that right message to our younger players. We want you to stay at Rangers Football Club and there's no need for you to go somewhere else.
Yeah, how important is that balance between developing players here but also recruitment just from elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, so again, my philosophy has always been, like many clubs, if you're going to, before you sign somebody, you should look on the pitch next door to you first. And there's a good reason for that. Number one, players who live in the area, grown up in the area, support the football club, they understand the football club much more and much better than anybody else from outside of it. So they understand the DNA, they're part of the fabric, and they want to win as much as anybody. So giving young players who are from this area is absolutely the first thing that we should be doing. And that doesn't also come straight away. Sometimes you have to keep the door open a little bit until some of these young players are ready, because it takes a little bit of time that to grow people up. A very good example of that would be from my previous role at Everton. Jared Branthwaite's a good example. Wasn't quite ready, had to go on loan, but we had to keep the door open for him. And we'll do the same for good young players here. Of course, if you haven't got a player who's going to be capable of making that step to the first team in a particular position, then maybe that's the time you also have to look elsewhere, because in reality, we have to fill the team of 11, and that team of 11 has to win. And so it's about making sure we get that nice balance between both of those elements that are going to be important to us.
Yeah, as obviously the international break as we speak, a number of players away on international duty, just how much pride does it give you and the staff to see so many players away representing their countries?
It's obviously a proud moment, and they're all seeming to be achieving some very great things. But of course, that is great, and we want that. We want them to be able to represent their countries. But then we also hope that they come back to us as quickly as possible, in as good a shape as they can, and then get their minds focused around achieving stuff for Rangers, here at Ibrox, and also in the European games, and also in the away matches. That has to be our focus.
Yeah, and just lastly, we aren't too far away from the opening of the January transfer window. Preparations already underway for that?
Yeah, so in reality, probably be interesting to talk through a process. So you've probably got a couple of days grace after any transfer window finishes, but then the work really starts in earnest. And that begins with the review and evaluation of the work that you've done so far. What did we do well in the window? What did we do not so well? What can we learn from what we did or what we didn't do? And then use that information and that intelligence to take us forwards. A slightly different situation for us in our context, because of course we lost a head coach and we've appointed a new head coach in Danny. And so we're very, very keen to make sure he is an integral part of that process going forwards. So we spent a couple of weeks allowing Danny the opportunity to evaluate the group and review the players that we've currently got in the squad. We've had a big meeting this week to sit down and talk about his feelings around the group so far and what he's learned about them, and also areas that we both think that we can improve. And then going forwards now, we'll use that information plus the information from the owners and other sources to start to plan for January, and we do expect to be fairly active. It's probably an important point to make that whilst I and others will do a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure we get in a space where we bring targets to the table that we think could improve the group, it really is about Danny having the final say in these moments. It's important as a sporting director that you don't bring players that the head coach doesn't want to sign off on. So it very much is about us working together with, in this instance, Danny having a final say.